Hey everyone, this is another, oops, as soon as the game will come up, there we go. This is another Where to Play. Um, so, last time we left off with this fairly common opening, black backed off at the top here, and the question is, should white play? Of course, there's a lot of options for white, there's not really a best way, but the reason the sanrensei formation kind of fell out of favor was actually because white had this really nice move of just double approaching. You know, approaching once at the top and then approaching again at the bottom. And the idea behind this is basically to make it so that white can get a very fast opening with a lot of development potential across the board, while still having like options or ways to deal with black's moyo. So, okay, black backs off. Let's say black backs off. And then white would actually take the large point on the left. Now, if black thinks, okay, I'm going to punish white for tenuking, which is normal, white can actually make these exchanges and back off. Or white could also just back off directly. And then if black follows up, just take the other big point. And white's really developing quite quickly across the board. Black's upper right shape is like perfect, but white has so much speed and potential. So, and alternatively, you can make these exchanges if you want to preserve the aji in the corner, and then back off. And it's kind of, you just mirror it. You notice that black has a lot of weaknesses on the right-hand side. And white is, you know, admittedly white has a lot of weaknesses too. White's very thin and spaced out. But white is also very fast and can cover the board really efficiently and quickly. So this is actually part of the reason the sanrensei fell out of favor. You might think, okay, but black's not going to back off twice. That's too passive. What if black pincers? But you notice that, you know, you could just play normal joseki, like this, and then white actually gets to come back to the top side. It's quite simple and nice. And now the left and the bottom and here are kind of miai-ish. And there's still many weaknesses on the right. So actually black has almost nothing you could really call guaranteed territory except maybe like 5 points here. Okay, so what else? You know, it's the same idea. Depending on what you like, you could also just take the corner, and this would be very simple. You know, and you still get sente to come back to the important point on the top. We actually see this concept in modern games too. Very similar idea in playing against the Chinese formation. This was actually played quite a bit by Chinese players in the last couple years, where white would play this in a really early invasion, and then make this kind of, it's not exactly a sacrifice, but it's like a half sacrifice, where you leave the corner, you know, you probe the corner to see if it can live first, and then the corner could live very small, and then you make this quick extension to the top, force black to defend the cutting points, and then you move to the bottom. And the whole point of this is, you know, white is getting around the board very quickly. You know, white got this shape in the upper right, and black's formation still has weaknesses. This peep, this attachment, invasion, cap. There's still quite a lot of moves that white can play. In fact, the main reason this is played against black is that you have this cap later. If black defends one side, you can attach to reduce, and similarly the other side you attach to reduce. And if you bump like this, that's totally like a thing, I guess. But, you know, black is very limited, and considering how many stones there are on the board, black basically only has the territory on the right side. So this is really quite, I want to say it's quite good for, I want to say it's like game over, because there are actually ways that black can play to make this game more difficult. But it is part of the reason you see things like these days. One innovation we saw was black plays the high Chinese, which came back into fashion. In large part to Gu Li, who came up with this variation, so that when white approaches, you can play this low enclosure. And the point of that is when you have this shape, then the space in here is a little bit easier to defend. The cap isn't quite as severe as before, or as pressing on black. So the shape is a bit better for black than before. That's one variation. But they all kind of have the same feeling. You move around the board quickly, and you press black to one side. Another countermeasure we've been seeing is white plays this approach and then plays here, or plays here, or plays the micro Chinese. Although the micro Chinese has a lot of other issues because the way the corner and the upper right plays is very different. But you see this one quite a bit, and that makes it so that it's much more difficult to approach at N4 because you can pincer. So you see these variations to try to kind of get around the idea of playing 3 moves on the right side early and getting pressed onto that. So these are all kind of like following the same idea. But the original line, maybe the first time people saw this idea was when people first played 3 moves on one side of the board, which was with this kind of shape, the sanrensei shape. And so you see this kind of double approach having a very similar idea. Okay, so for next week, we have this position, the nirensei position, and black approaches. White pincers, and of course you can play the ladder variation. It's quite complicated, and it ends up with a ladder breaker in the bottom right. But white also has some other interesting options. Something I saw fairly recently, it's been kind of a while, but another idea I saw was, what if white plays, an enclosure? Complete tenuki, right? It's fairly uncommon, but it has actually some ideas behind it, so I thought it might be interesting to talk about. So of course black wants to follow up in the upper left, so black plays here maybe. And the question is, what does white do next? What was the idea of tenuking, and how do you handle this upper right situation? Of course black has other follow-ups, like attacking here. So I'll talk about those next time. One thing before I end this video is I have a new, I had an idea. I created an email address, wheretoplayreviews. Let me just check. I think it's with reviews. Yeah, wheretoplayreviews with an S at the end, at gmail.com. If you want to send me links to games that you guys have played that I can use as material for more of these videos, because it is kind of difficult to keep coming up with novel positions that aren't just joseki or classic shapes that you guys find interesting. So I thought if they're your games, they might be more interesting. Yeah, so if you want to send like links or SGF files there, that would be great, because it gives me material, it gives you guys some reviews that are like your games, so that might be interesting. Yeah, so okay, that's it for today, and thank you. See you all next time.